I'm Effie Barker. We are right here in downtown Los Angeles. When you say we're not going away with these issues, what are those issues? Good evening. Welcome to the special edition of Ugnayan. I'm Effie Barker. How effective is Astrozenica with the Brazilian variant?
We don't have that data as yet. So the Brazilian variant was really a mouse variant. So a complicated situation there. Lab tests do suggest that there's going to be some drop in efficacy. So we know that the mutations that the Brazil variant has, and indeed the South Africa variant has, do appear to enable the virus to escape some of the key antibodies that both natural infection and, of course, the vaccines induce, but is not going to make it ineffective. So I think, we do have, for example, some cases of the Brazilian variant here in the UK. We have several hundred known cases of the South Africa variant. And of course, our big fear was that these would spread much in the way that the UK variant did and start to dominate. That hasn't happened, certainly for the South African variant. So it looks as if perhaps the UK variant that has the high levels of transmission, fortunately, perhaps not the vaccine escape properties of Brazil or South Africa variant. So our own UK high transmission variant is perhaps buffering against spread of these other ones at the moment. But I certainly think we will be looking at tweaked vaccines come the end of this year that have been modified to account for the South African and the Brazil variant.
What is your overall view of the pandemic, and what do you think is the origin of COVID-19?
Wow. So it's odd, actually. I've been teaching pandemic preparedness to the students at Bath for so many years now. And of course, we've all been focused on flu. We've had swine flu, but we've talked about SARS, for example. Mm-hmm. And it was really odd to see this pandemic sort of marching westwards across the globe. And despite all of the things I've been teaching for the last number of years, it was quite clear that the interconnectedness of the world these days, the highly infectious nature of this virus, plus the fact that significant numbers of people can carry it without showing any symptoms whatsoever. Yes. It was really the perfect storm. It was dangerous enough to make it, of course, a huge worry, and we've seen a terrible death toll globally over the last 12 months. So the source, who knows? We'll never quite know, I don't think, the actual source. It's quite clear that this is a virus that has jumped from some other species to become adapted to very effective transmission amongst humans. I suspect it'll end up being endemic within the human population, so another beta coronavirus, perhaps causing relatively mild respiratory disease, maybe serious enough that we have to continue to vaccinate, on a regular basis, much as we do flu. But that origin, I'm not sure we'll ever know exactly where it came from. But I think that the message going forward is this is the fourth really quite dangerous virus we've had in the last 17 years. We've had SARS, we've had MERS, the swine flu in 2009. Now, of course, this 4 in 17 years suggests we need to be expecting other situations similar to this one to arise. And it's quite clear that however prepared we thought we were, it was pretty ineffective. And so I think there's some really important lessons to be learned, both at the regional, the national, but particularly at the global level. And it's going to take a really joined up global approach to protect ourselves better against these emerging viruses.
So it's not from bats then?
It could be. Certainly, I think bats are a significant reservoir for these coronaviruses. But whether this came directly from a bat into humans, or whether perhaps like SARS and MERS, we think there was an intermediate host that enabled it to jump so effectively into humans, we may never know exactly what that intermediate host was. But it's quite clear that I think bats are a very good place to look to learn more about these viruses, and maybe as sentinels for ones that may have all of the sort of necessary armory to make another jump into people. And so we monitor flu viruses that are circulating in people and wildlife in certain parts of the globe. It may be that we need to start to do this for coronaviruses on a much bigger scale.
Do you think that we have increased our knowledge about this virus? Are we gaining any genetic information, skills, and insights that will benefit us in the future?
I think we've learnt an awful lot. It's been fascinating to see this this pandemic play out. I think this has been the first digital age pandemic. So we've seen, lightning fast sort of explosion of information. The numbers of research papers and studies that have come out on COVID in just 12 months is staggering. Many, many thousands. And most of these studies have been published almost as they've been completed. So using digital platforms. So the sharing of information, I think, has just been fantastic. I think it's been truly a global effort. And of course, I think the big legacy going forward, that these new vaccines, so the messenger RNA vaccines and obviously the viral vector vaccines, such as the Oxford one, they've been around for a little while, but I think this was their sort of debut on the global stage. So I think, when we first started off seeking a COVID-19 vaccine, we had these cautionary tales that it usually takes 10, 15 years to produce a vaccine, and 99% of them fail before they ever reach the market. I think now that has changed. It's quite clear that these new platforms can be purposed and repurposed much, much faster for that. And I think also it shows that when there is really a will and the resources are put behind it, we can go an awful lot faster than 10 years. And I think that'll be really interesting going forward now. It's just this explosion of new vaccines for perhaps some neglected diseases that really have now been shown, I think, to be suitable to these new approaches. So I think this is a new dawn, a new era of rapid development of vaccines using these different platforms. So maybe one good legacy to come out of what is almost certainly going to be a very painful legacy for the planet for the next decade at least, I think.
You think it has been faster and quicker when we develop these vaccine compared to the other viruses?
So a traditional vaccine development is usually sort of involves working with the actual infectious agent, whether it be a virus or a bacterium. Here, these new vaccines, so the messenger RNA vaccine and the viral vector vaccines, they don't even need to have the infectious agent on their premise. As long as we have the genetic sequence for those, they can develop then their own vaccines, so the messenger RNA, DNA vaccines, and the viral vector vaccines remarkably quickly. It's a very fast process. So a lot of that sort of 10 years of developing a new vaccine, that was spent a lot of time learning about the biology of the infectious agent and which components of it might make good vaccine antigens. Now I think we can do that very quickly. It was just a matter of weeks from the identification of this virus to the first prototype vaccines going into those first few trials. Dramatically faster than that sort of normal 10 years. And I think that's the way forward now. We did actually learn quite a lot from SARS and MERS. So it was immediately obvious which component of the COVID-19 virus was going to make the most obvious bit to attack with the vaccine. And as soon as the sequence was released with these new platforms that I keep sort of mentioning, it is a remarkably quick process. You don't even need to get the virus, which means you're not working with a highly dangerous pathogen, which opens this, the far more premises then can be involved with vaccine development because you don't need the high containment facilities. And also, with the processes we have, they're relatively well-tried methods required to actually then create those prototype vaccines. So it's not unique in each stage because if you're working with the actual infectious agent itself to make a more traditional vaccine, they each have their own nuances. So growing them up, for example, in large enough volumes to use can often take a long time to perfect that process. Here, we're using the same vectors. So the Oxford vaccine, viral vector, they've been working with that for a number of years. They knew how to grow it, very quickly and in large scale. The messenger RNA vaccines, it's almost a synthetic construct. So again, using traditional, or molecular biology techniques rather than having to grow the virus itself. So a completely different way to design and develop and produce your vaccines. Now, vaccination is a very sensitive topic. We can have as many really good vaccines as we want available. If no one wants to take them, they're as good as useless. Please, when you're hearing rumors and perhaps what I would call disinformation about vaccines, please take the trouble to look to find the actual evidence behind these stories. Don't just accept something you've read off a website or maybe a social media chat. Don't accept someone else's word for it. Make your own informed decision. And then I think you'll be in a really good place to understand whether these vaccines are right for you. Obviously, I'm a huge believer in vaccines. I think they've saved countless lives over the last 70 years or so. The information is out there, so the actual facts and the evidence, please don't rely on rumors. Find out for yourself and make your own decision. Don't let someone else make it for you.
This is all our time. Thank you so much again for explaining and coming to our show. Dr. Andrew Preston of University of Bath.
Thanks, Effie.
Thank you.